أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My sisters in Islam, today inshallah we are going to be going on with some more knowledge, inshallah, with some more advice, particularly marriage advice, because of course, a healthy family is in a healthy husband and a wife. So before we talk about childhood, it's really important to talk about having a healthy husband and wife relationship. Last time we started talking off about a lot of marital advice. We talked about 8 points, and most of all of them evolve about having love for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, looking to each other's passion and interests, looking to each other with respect. All of these things we talked about last time, but today, inshallah, we're going to go on with more marital advice. And like I said before, Tarbiyah is something that you acquire also by knowledge. So we are not supposed to be too proud and say, well, I've been married for 20 years, or all of these points I know. I'm sure that many of the things I do say, sometimes you do know them. But like the Quran taught us, فَذَكِّرْ إِن نَفَعَتِ الذِّكْرَى, which means remind the people, because sometimes you benefit from being reminded. It's like many times you do know things, but you forgot them, because this life is going really fast. And we've got so many things to think about that many times we forget the most important things, the crucial things that have to go with our what? With our marriage. So I just want to, stress one more time that speaking about parenting doesn't necessarily mean that we only speak about how we raise our children. If we want to start off with parenting, it's very important to start off with the relationship between the husband and the wife, because they are the role models. And when we talk about tarbiyah, we're talking about teaching our children to have healthy relationships. So I'm sure they're going to be looking to mom and dad as role models so that they can teach us in their life how to have a healthy relationship. Okay? And another thing that's important is that if there's problems between the husband and the wife, that is going to reflect their parenting. Because, I mean, like, let me tell you guys something. If, for instance, right now, I was going through problems, or I had problems right now, I can tell you guys something. If I was like in a really bad mood, it would be really hard for me as a teacher to give you guys the lecture, because as people, we get affected by the environment that we're living in. So for this reason, how am I going to be able to give into being a good parent if I myself have problems with my partner who's supposed to be helping me? So let's go on, sisters, inshallah, and let's start off with number 9. And it's another marriage advice between husband and wife. And by the way, it's really crucial and it causes a lot of problems. And this has to do with your non-mahrams. You guys all know that a mahram is somebody you cannot marry. And of course, a non-mahram is someone that you can marry. And in Islam, a woman can, she can sit in solitude with her mahram. She can do, khulwa, or be with a person that's mahram alone. So you can be with your husband alone, with your dad alone, with your brother, your nephew alone, and so on. But anybody that's a non-mahram, you have to be very careful, okay? So for this reason, if a man or woman, they have taqwa and they fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are not going to have any kind of physical contact with somebody that is not a blood relative. What I mean by blood relative is what? A non-mahram. We have to pay attention to that. And you guys know that whether it's us women going to work or our husbands going to work, we're always going to be around people that are not mahrams. And you guys know that the people that are ill-hearted, they are going to try to attract you. Whether a man is trying to attract you or a woman is trying to attract your husband. So for this reason, we have to understand there's a lot of fitna out there. And for this reason, when your husband comes home, what does home mean for him? It's supposed to be a reward for him. So when he comes home, he's supposed to be getting his reward because he did something called lowering the gaze. He did not do khulwa. He was not with a woman by herself. He was trying to, control his emotions and to be a strong Muslim. And the same with you. So for this reason, when you both get home, you guys are supposed to be a reward for each other after a long, dry day. And so for this reason, the affection and the love and the beautiful fragrances and the beauty and the colors and the makeup and everything, that's supposed to be for who? For your husband, sisters. Hijab is outside. When we go outside, out of the house, we are going out in a business way. We're not looking for colors to attract men. We're not looking for a certain voice, a certain way of talking to attract men. We are going out for business. So for this reason, we are not supposed to expect anything when it comes to the love and the attraction except from our husbands. And the same goes to our husbands. They're not supposed to be, expecting anything then from their wife. So the problem that arises sometimes is that when men go home, they don't find that domestic bliss. And when I'm talking about domestic, I mean home. And bliss is that happiness and joy. I mean, every man and woman, when they go home, they're supposed to be looking forward to getting home. It's like, I can't wait to go home, because I've got a reward waiting for me. After all of that, all the effort that I put in to making our household being strong. So what does bliss look like? It's supposed to be like going home, finding a nice, peaceful, quiet home. The wife is not nagging. I'm sorry, when I speak about something, I mean the husband and the wife. But here, because, I'm speaking with women, so I'm going to be directing my conversation with you guys, okay? So of course, this goes to men also. Some of you guys might be like, well, why am I listening to this and my husband isn't? Well, there's no problem. You learn it and teach it to your husband. You learn what we're taking and you teach it to your husband, but we're both supposed to be practicing it. And if your husband doesn't want to practice it, I mean, you be the leader. You be the one to start, because I really do believe that if you start, he will, after that, follow, inshallah. So we want a house that's quiet, no nagging. It smells good. You smell good. There's no chaos. Everything's organized. Everybody's welcoming each other. Everybody's supporting each other. So picture a child living in a house where everybody knows their limits. Their mom and dad, they themselves are being role models. And you guys know that there are a lot of children out there, especially teenagers. They're looking to the opposite sex. So when they find their dad and mom just having that love and affection between them, that teaches them that they also have to control, their feelings and be like their mom and dad. Because the only way they can express their love in Islam is within a marriage life. Love is not haram. I've got a lot of students out there, they ask me, well, Dr. Muna, is love haram? I told them, no, love is not haram between a man and a woman. But the only way to express this love in Islam, it's limited within a marriage. You can't just go out there and have boyfriend and girlfriend. So it's not the problem with the love, it's the way you express your love. So when the child sees the mom and dad not flirting, okay, with somebody outside the household, that teaches them to be good role models also. Okay, so that's very important, because we've got men and women, like for instance, the child will see the mom at home. She's not, taking care of herself. When she goes out, she wants to attract the men. And the same thing, the child sees the dad at home. He doesn't say any kind of affectionate words. He's not being nice to his mom, the parent's mom. But when, mashallah, when he goes out, he's flirting with the women. So this is a big, big problem, sisters. So we have to be very crucial when it comes to non-mahrams. Okay, let's go on with the domestic bliss. We said that the husband and a wife, they're a reward for each other. So when they get home, you know, we're supposed to feel that like it's the turmoil is over. It's like outside they were in a storm, but when they came home, the house is like the eye of a storm. Do you guys know that the calmest part of a storm is the eye? Like many people might think that when there's a hurricane or there's a storm, the eye is the strongest. No, the eye is the what? The most peaceful. So when we're talking about a storm, here we're talking about a person outside with all that fitna, with all that stress. So when you get home, you're supposed to feel that that storm is over, because right now you're in the eye of the storm where all the peacefulness, all the calmness, the quiet, it's in our houses, inshallah. Okay. Another thing that causes the house to be the eye of the storm is that when that person, when your spouse gets home, I mean, there are so many people that are just waiting. And this is a problem. And I find it mostly in women, by the way, the wives. I mean, she's so agitated. She's so annoyed with what happened. And she just can't wait to have her husband get home and make her feel annoyed just like she is. She's like, why are you laughing? Why are you coming in so relaxed? Do you know what happened to me today at work? Do you know what your child did? Come on, calm down. I mean, it doesn't mean if you're angry, you have to make your husband angry. So for this reason, when your husband comes home, what are you supposed to do? Don't talk about the bad news. You know, make the house very comfortable. And you know, every time I hear the story or read the story of that Muslim Sahabiya, she's a Muslim woman companion, and I think about it, I'm just like, I don't know, sometimes I get really surprised about it. And sometimes you feel like it's fiction, it's not real, but it is real. I want you guys to picture what kind of bad news would be worse than having your infant son or daughter die. I mean, do you guys think that there's anything worse than hearing about death? Okay. So subhanallah, her baby died. And when her husband came home, she didn't tell him anything. She wore the best clothes, she put the best fragrance, she let him have his meal and everything. And then she came to him in a very nice, thoughtful, um, religious way and told him, you know, that if somebody gave you a trust, and that trust was asked from you to give it back, what would you do? He told her, I would give that trust back. And she said, well, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us amana. He gave us a trust, which is our child. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose today to take this trust. Subhanallah, she was so calm. And that's what I think we have to be, calm, really. And to try to not just be there to try to make another storm in the house, because the person who's coming from outside is coming from a storm. You don't need to make another storm. So take things easy, have the taqwa, have the deen, know how to break the news and know how to break the bad news at the right time in a nice manner. And that teaches your children, you know, even your children, when they see you talking to your husband like that, they're not going to come and just agitate you and make you feel bad. They're going to be like, wow, mom, the way she broke the news, she was so angry with me. You know, sometimes you're angry with your children, but when your husband comes, you just act calm as if nothing happened, you know? So this is very important. Let's go back to the non-mahrams, sisters. Never be with a non-mahram with khulwa. What I mean by khulwa means in solitude, alone. That is a big haram. And mostly be careful with your in-laws, your brother-in-law, for instance. And you guys all know that the Prophet ﷺ, he warned us, especially from the brother-in-law, because brother-in-laws are going and coming. We have to understand something. Your brother cannot walk into the house if you're not home. That's something that you have to teach people. I know I mean, you guys, we have to forget about customs and traditions. No, customs and traditions, we do respect them, but if they contradict to the teachings of Islam, we have to put them aside, okay? Our priority is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't make anything an obligation or prohibit anything except that it is, it was from our benefit. It's good for us. So that's very important, that you never be with another guy that's not mahram if your husband is not there. If you have something to do with another guy, take your husband with you, And even if it has to do with social media, by the way, I mean, sometimes you'll be talking to your boss or you're talking to your colleague because you have to, okay? Here, make your husband with you. Try to make him with you in the conversation. I remember seeing some husbands, to the extent that, like, if he had to give his WhatsApp application account to another woman, he would give her his wife's account so that she would, send the information to who? His wife. I'm not saying it has to be to that extent, but what I'm trying to say is there's a big problem, which is that sometimes it's not physical contact, by the way. Sometimes you can get emotionally attached to somebody who shows you their kindness and friendliness. Like sometimes, like when you're in work and your colleague is showing you all that kindness and friendliness, what happens is emotionally, we're not talking about physically, but emotionally, you might get what? Attached. So you really do have to pay attention to that. Okay? So always, sisters, we as women, we don't want anything except from our husbands. Our husbands are everything in life. We have to show that to the people that, my husband, he's everything for me. I do not need anybody else. Okay? So that's a very important thing because it really causes a lot of problems. So never let anybody in that's not a mahram. Never. If your husband is not home, or for instance, if your male child is like 19, 18, 17, okay, he's old enough. But still, you should never let anybody in when your husband's not there. If he wants to come visit his brother, he can come do that when your husband's at home. There's no need for you to come when your husband is not there. So this is a big important thing that causes problems between the husband and the wife. And it's something that is stated in the Islamic Sharia, and it's haram to do something called what? Called khulwa. So keep that in mind because it causes a lot of problems. Another marital advice is that conflict is inevitable. I mean, we have to understand something. Sometimes sisters get into fights, okay? And brothers get into fights. So it's really natural that we have fights, okay? So disagreements happen in life. And by the way, we call them the variety. It's a spice of life. So sometimes when you have a disagreement and then you guys come back, sometimes you come back stronger and you love each other even more. So that's the way life is. You always have conflicts, but conflicts should be in a healthy manner. And especially we have to understand something. The first 2 or 3 years, that's when most of the challenges come in. And by the way, the weird thing is during those 2-3 years, that's when life is so exciting. Why is it exciting? Because in the first 2 years of your life, for instance, you guys got married, so that's a change. You guys are now living in a new house, so that's a new change. You're on your own. Before you had to get your, parents' advice and this and that. But now you and your husband are making your own house. You might even, within these 2 or 3 years, have your new child, new job, moving to a new state, a new country. So everything's new and exciting. But at the same time, it's really challenging because you guys are getting to know each other. And by the way, I noticed that most of the divorce that happens is within the first 2 years. And that's a problem. And what are the reasons for that? It's because everybody's got that ego. In Arabic, they call it a nafs, Everybody's got an ego and everybody wants to say, hey, I'm here. So this is a big problem. By the way, the marriage in Islam, getting married, it's not much about struggling against your husband's ego. It's more about you struggling against your ego. That no, I have to understand that I can't always want my way and always keep conflicting with my husband. I mean, sometimes I have to say, I'm sorry. Sometimes I have to say, that's it. I have to be quiet. I have to have my limits. Okay. So it's a big challenge. And I believe that the more you get to know your husband, the more you guys grow. And it's okay to have different interests. It's okay to have different personalities. But in the end, you guys both must strive to get the same goals, which is to please Allah and to have a healthy what? To have a very healthy family. And here I want to ask you guys a question, okay? I want to ask you guys a very important question. I'm going to give you guys an example of a dialogue. And in this dialogue, I want to ask you guys, what's your point of view? Okay. So we said that conflicts are inevitable, which means that, I mean, you always have to, there has to be conflicts between a husband and a wife. That's something very normal. And it's a healthy marriage, by the way. Okay. And it's okay for your children to see that sometimes you guys disagree, by the way. I mean, we also don't want our children to understand that marriage is that, you know, utopian life where there's no disagreements. They have to understand that there are disagreements. I mean, they see themselves disagreeing with their brothers and sisters. Sometimes they disagree with the parents, okay? But we want a healthy conflict, okay? So here the question is, there's a dialogue between Ahmed and his wife, husband and wife, they're sitting with each other. And they've also got their mother-in-law sitting, okay? Whether it's the mother-in-law from the mother's side, wife's side, or the husband's side, no problem, okay? So Ahmed says, I don't believe in the word compromise when it comes to marriage. Ahmed doesn't believe in anything about compromising. He believes that, you know, he just has the word and that's it. So the mother-in-law says, what are you saying? Marriage is all about compromising, okay? So his mother or his wife's mother said, marriage is all about compromising. And also, if you guys remember in our last class, Sister Ruqayya, which is a grandparent, I don't know if she's with us today. Sister Ruqayya, are you with us? Are you hearing me? I don't know if she's with us. Let me see. No, actually, she's not with us right now. So she said, you know, I've been married and her husband, may Allah have mercy on him, he died. And she's like, marriage is all about compromising. And we do hear that all. And it's very important. And it, you know, somehow it is true. But listen to what Ahmed went on to explain. Ahmed said, if you think of everything as a compromise, you are going to keep score and eventually going to become bitter. Once you try to do something, try to embrace it fully and believe in it. Don't think of it as a compromise anymore. This is what I want to hear from you guys. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, they're like, listen, you just have to compromise. Whatever it is, compromise. Okay? What Ahmed is saying is, no, it's not always compromise. I mean, if you believe in something, you should say what you believe in. Okay. So what do you guys think about that? Should we always, when we start talking to our spouses, always have the intention of, okay, from the beginning, we have to compromise? Or should we have the intention to try to really believe in something and try to convince our spouse about it? I want to hear from you guys. Who would like to give their point of view? Should we start off with the intention of compromising, or should we start off with the intention to really try to get our point? And then at the end, if it doesn't work, okay, we will compromise. What do you say, Sister Naima?
I think that's a very good point. Like when it comes to, I think that's something that being in married for 15 years, I actually
Yes.
strongly agree with it, because I
So
feel
you
like
agree
when
with
you,
Ahmed? You agree
yes,
with Ahmed? Yes.
when you do come with the compromise, I think if, especially a stay-home mom, you
Yeah.
do start to have resentment if you're not doing it
Yeah.
out of love, out of
Yes.
like, okay, I'm getting reward, and at the end of the day, if there's not something that is really driving you to do it for your
Yeah.
husband, for your children, it does turn into resentment. And that's one of the reasons why you have to voice it, even
Yes.
if you, at the end of the day, if you both disagree on that thing, it's
Yes.
still good to get it out of your system. Even with,
Good.
you know, with
Yeah.
psychology therapists say that to you too, is that get it out, talk about it. Disagreements are always going to happen, but you
Yeah.
keeping it in and taking it out after 4, 5, 6 years, that's
Yeah.
what hurts the
Yeah.
relationship, I believe, the most.
Yeah. That's really nice, Sister Naima. Very nice. Does anybody else have another point of view? What do you guys think? You know why I'm bringing it up? Because there are a lot of people, that's the way they teach. Like sometimes mothers, they teach their daughters, it's all about compromise. That's it, khalas, get it over, compromise. Okay, it's nice to compromise, but that's at the end. It comes at the end of the discussion. Okay, so somebody at the end has to, we have to reach to a compromise. But you guys all know that in Islam, there's a surah called Surah Ash-Shura, and Shura means consultation. So, I mean, even if the husband is the head of the house or the household, he should take the consultation of the wife. I mean, she does have a saying. She should give her point of view. So for this reason, if the wife from the beginning is going to put the intention that she's going to compromise, that means that she's not going to try to give her point of view. She's not going to be giving a strong point of view. From the beginning, try to get your idea to your husband. And the same goes with the husband. So that's going to make you like try to come up with a good convincing, idea that you're going to, or a point that you want to make, that you want to state. So after you do make that statement and you say what you want, if he accepts it, by the way, he might accept it. He might be, oh, that's a good, idea. You made a good point. So maybe he will accept it, At the end, maybe he doesn't accept it. Okay. Here we say it's not worth getting into a fight. Okay. So here we might compromise. But at the beginning, we should fully believe in what we're saying and give our point of view. And by the way, sometimes maybe in the end, after a year or maybe after a month, he'll be like, you know what you said was right. Sometimes it'll hit him later on that what you said was right. And by the way, maybe sometimes it will hit him that what you said was wrong. It doesn't mean if we're women that everything we say is correct. Okay. So yes, I do believe marriage is about compromising, but not from the first minute. I mean, if you've got something, get it out of your chest, say what you want to do, give your point of view. And then in the end, if it doesn't work, I mean, why should we just get in a fight over it, So let it go. And maybe in the future, you can find other ways to convince him that what you're saying is correct. I mean, you don't have to convince a person from the first night you're sitting with him. Maybe it'll take you time to convince. Okay. So try to find it. If you really believe in it, try to find another strategy. Okay. So that's very important. Okay. Another thing is, and this has to go with the ego, and it's a big problem because I really think that one of the biggest, and by the way, this is what a lot of people say, and even psychologists, they say that the worst sin that you can get out of you, it's the last one is when you are too proud or arrogant. That's the last sin that comes out of a person, So being arrogant, you guys, that's a big problem, especially when it comes to husband and wife. Okay. So you're not supposed to be too proud to apologize. I mean, we have to reflect on ourselves and understand that many times we can be the ones to make the problem. And it's not wrong for us to say, I'm sorry. We have to get used to that. I mean, even our children, when they see us apologizing to each other, because you guys know, I mean, I have to tell you guys something. It's not about just your husband, sisters, but it's also about that we are held accountable on the day of judgment. A lot of people think, and this is very important, I mean, there are sins between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the day of judgment, if Allah wills to forgive you, he will forgive you. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take you accountable of what you did or said, Allah will take you accountable. But that's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the worst problem is the sins between you and humans. I mean, these on the day of judgment, Allah is not going to forgive you for a sin that you did with another human being. That human being has to forgive you. And many times, because we're married, a lot of women think that, well, he's my husband, he's going to forgive me. No, you could have hurt him. I mean, on the day of judgment, everybody wants to get their what? To get their rights, How do you know that your husband forgave you? I mean, so that for this reason, it's very important. We're not just apologizing because he's my husband and I want my life to be kind of like settled and the household settled and because of the children. No, every single one of us, when we go to sleep at night, we have to ask ourselves. We have to hold ourselves accountable. Like Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anh, he said, "Hasibu anfusakum qabla an tuhasabu." You know, everybody should take themselves accountable. You ask yourself, what did I do? Before Allah asks you on the day of judgment. So you have to sit there and it's not wrong. And don't be too proud about that. And it's okay. Go against your ego, you know, and just say, I'm sorry. I was wrong. And, you know, what happens is after you say, I'm sorry and I'm wrong. And what I did, I shouldn't have done that. You know, the relief that you see on your partner's face and the peace that you're going to see in the house, it's worth it, sisters. It's really, really worth it. And you guys know when you are arrogant and you refuse to apologize, the shaitan is just going to make it worse. So for this reason, we have to learn to apologize. And that is teaching your children how to apologize, because we've got a lot of people that are like, no, I'm not going to apologize to my friend. He's supposed to apologize to me, because they're seeing their moms and dads. They are arrogant. They have that ego. So you have to teach your children that if you do something wrong because you're not perfect, even me and dad are not perfect. See, mom and dad, if I do something wrong, I will say I'm sorry, and do it in front of the children too. Like, especially if they saw the problem that happened between you and your husband and they saw what you did was wrong, you should apologize in front of your children to make up for it, okay? Because they saw wrong from you. So now that you have to show what? Right. And this reminds me of the ayah, Innal hasanati yudhibna sayyi'at. Like if you do a sin, how are you going to get rid of that sin? By doing a good deed. So the good deed, it erases the bad deed. So the same thing, if you do something wrong in front of your child, they saw the wrong from you. So now let them see the istighfar. Now let them see you apologizing to that person. Okay? So that makes up for it. Okay? So that's very important. So sisters, I mean, there are a lot of sisters out there, they have that high ego and they just don't want to say, I'm sorry. Well, you have to, the biggest challenge, sisters, is to go against your nafs. Like I said, the struggle in marriage is not your husband. It's not his ego. It's your ego. So I think the biggest jihad is to go against your ego. Okay. So if you did do something wrong, say, I'm sorry. I'm not saying that if you didn't do something wrong, say, I'm sorry. No, you don't apologize for something you didn't do. But maybe if your husband has a high ego and he's not coming to apologize, maybe you can try to teach him, you know? Okay. Like if he refuses to apologize, maybe your husband, he's not going to come and tell you, I'm sorry, but maybe well, let's go back to the language. Remember, just like everybody's got a love language, maybe everybody's got, an apologizing language. Like maybe he's going to come in, instead of saying, I'm sorry, he'll bring you something that you like, or he'll do the dishes for you, or he'll bring you a flower or a rose. Okay. So that's his way of apologizing. All right. So this is very important, sisters. Okay. So this is really, really important. Another thing is, and this is a big problem, it's the abuse. And by the way, when we talk about abuse, it doesn't necessarily have to do with the husband and the wife, just the husband. I mean, sometimes women can be emotionally abusive and they can also be physically abusive, even more than who? Than their husbands. I mean, everybody gets angry, and this is called in Arabic al-ghadab. And by the way, when the companion asked the Prophet ﷺ for advice, he told him, La taghdab. And he said it 3 times. Because ghadab and anger can really destroy. In a minute of anger, you can destroy everything. And sometimes you might be getting out some things that you never wanted to get out, and that person will just remember it. So you're not supposed to have a bad temper. And by the way, the people's true natures, they're revealed when they're angry. Sometimes when they're calm, they're like, oh, mashallah, that person's a very quiet, calm, peaceful person. And then when they get angry, you're like, oh my God, I didn't know that person was like that. So it's like you're getting out your what? Your true nature. And if you guys remember, when once a man asked, Umar ibn al-Khattab asked about a man, and he said, yeah, I know him. So Umar ibn al-Khattab told him, well, did you ever try him financially? Did you ever go out with him on a journey? And he said, no. He said, okay, then you don't know him. So getting to know the real nature of your spouse, it happens when you get married. You're probably not going to notice a lot of things when you are at the times, like when you get what do you call it, when you guys get in the khutbah, okay, when you're engaged. Sometimes these things don't show because you're not living with that person. He comes 1 hour to the house, but when you guys get married, the tempers start to what? To show. So for this reason, there's a very important thing that we have to understand. We are Muslims, sisters. We are Muslims. And you can never make an excuse. And I want you guys to pay attention to what's written here in the yellow, the highlighted yellow. This is very important because it will affect yourselves and it will affect your children too. Being angry is never an excuse to break or throw things. I mean, I see women and men. Like there's sometimes if the woman was in the kitchen and she had like a pot in her hand, she'll throw it. No, being angry is never an excuse to break or throw things or to start screaming or to curse or to use foul language or to slam the door. Like sometimes she gets angry with her husband, she goes and slams the door in his face. Or for her husband to pull her hair and say, hey, come here, or her to scratch with her nails, or to raise your arm, or to throw punches. These are all things that happen in dysfunctional marriages. This marriage is dysfunctional. If your marriage is dysfunctional, then that means your household, your children are going to be dysfunctional. And like I said, the kids that hit, the kids that scream, they're just mocking their parents. Where did they get it from? From their parents. And never, never, brothers or sisters, even if you get really angry, never say, I will divorce you. Never. Or sometimes even women, they'll be like, okay, if you don't want me, then you can divorce me. I don't want you anymore. You guys, we have to be calm when we're angry. I mean, there's no excuse. Even Islam teaches us, if you're standing up and you're angry, sit down. If you're sitting down and the anger doesn't go, go and sleep. Go make wudu. Go pray. If you're just going to get into a fight, I think that the man, when he's angry, just get out of the house for a while. Make things, sometimes when the man gets out of the house, she has time to think and he has time to think, and he changes the situation and he comes back in a better, with a better attitude. So for this reason, the shaitan comes to the people. One of the dreams of the shaitan is to cause divorce between the husband and the wife. So for this reason, as much as you are frustrated, you have to learn to control yourself. And believe me, if you have that self-control, you are teaching it to your children. I want to tell you guys something. You might be saying, well, this is a Tarbiyah course, Dr. Muna. Why are you talking about the husband and the wife? You guys, we're doing Tarbiyah. We said Tarbiyah is being a good role model, teaching your children how to have healthy relationships. This is all going to come from your relationship with your husband. You and him are having a relationship in front of your son and daughter, a relationship they have been growing with, they have been seeing day by day. What better relationship could they learn from than this relationship in the house? What better role models could they have than their moms and their dads? So this is tarbiyah, okay? This is tarbiyah. This is very important. Another thing is never be disrespectful to your partner. Okay. And here there's a golden rule when it comes to this. Okay. When your spouse is angry or agitated, stay quiet in the heat of the moment. I remember my mom always used to teach me that. And like if my husband gets angry in front of my mom, for instance, and she sees me just like start to say a word, she'll start like with her foot telling me or with her eye blinking. In other words, Mom, just be quiet. Okay. When he's angry, at that moment, be quiet, okay? You can always make your point at a later time. I mean, let's say, okay, he's angry right now, and you're going to start disagreeing with him and telling him, no, that's not right. He's not going to listen to you because he's angry. When a person is really angry, they really don't, focus on what you're saying. And, and when you want to speak, you want to be heard. And you're not going to be heard when he's angry. Forget about it. Don't speak about something when he's angry. Wait till another time. You've got you can say it in a different time. Even if it's out one more day later or 2 days or 3 days, you can choose the right time to talk about it. Okay. And here I want to talk about another thing is sometimes that women, when they get really angry with their husbands and they disagree with them, they always use the word always or never. You are always you always do this bad thing, or you never do that. And you know, subhanallah, this reminds me of the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he talked about how women were the most in the nar. You know, women are more than men in the nar. And the reason, one of the reasons why women, many women are in the hellfire is because of this thing. It's called yakfurna al-ashir. Ashir means husband, and yakfurna means that she forgets everything good that he did. And I don't know, I guess that's something in women, and because they're emotional, more emotional than they are rational. So sometimes she's like, okay, her husband did so many nice things to her. When she gets mad, she forgets all the good and she just focuses on the bad. And she starts using the word, you always do this, or you never do that. Don't generalize, okay? There's always a shade of gray. I mean, it's not always black and white. I mean, we're people, we're humans, we make mistakes, okay? So don't, in the midst of your conflict with your spouse, forget about all the good things that he did, okay? That's very important. This is another problem that happens, and it even happens with your children, but let me talk about it between the husband and the wife. Don't expect your partner to be a mind reader, okay? So your husband comes home, all right, and you're sitting on the couch and you're, you know, putting your face to the right and you're not looking at him and you're all angry and he's looking, he's like, did I say something? In his mind, he's saying, I didn't say something. I didn't disrespect her. I didn't do anything wrong. So in his mind, he's like, what's wrong? And then he looks at her and he's like, what's wrong? And she's like, I don't want to tell you why I'm angry. You should know. And this happens sometimes with the husband, by the way. Men do this too. She's like, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? He's like, you're asking me too? You don't know what you did? I mean, why do you guys always think that we're mind readers, whether it's the husband or the wife? I mean, sometimes you don't know. Well, let me tell you something. I mean, okay, the more you have experience with your husband, I can tell you, you will know how to read his eyes and you will know when he's discomfortable. Okay, but that needs time. But you're not always a mind reader. I mean, sometimes you're like, I really don't know what's wrong. So for this reason, if one of you guys is angry or something's bothering you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you guys are angry with each other. I mean, maybe you're angry with something that happened outside the house. It's bothering you. So discuss it. Open it up and start talking, okay? Whether it has to do with you or your husband, or if it's something outside of your household, say it. And this is very important. I mean, many times children, this happens with children too, because they learn it from the parents. They'll come home and you're like, Mom, what's wrong with you? They're like, you don't know? I was like, come on, Mom, what's wrong? Mom, you have to know. Wallah, I don't know. Can you please say, I know I'm your mom, but I don't know everything. I'm not a mind reader. Something's bothering you, say it. And we have to teach our children to communicate, because there are a lot of people out there, they just don't want to talk. They're greedy in their emotions. You guys, sometimes greediness is not just with the money. Sometimes greediness is in the emotions. You don't even want to say what's wrong. And you're making the household so tired because you want us, or you expect us to know what you're talking about. So for this reason, sisters, if something's bothering you, don't, just feel free. If it's, it's a suitable time, sit with your husband and say, listen, I want to discuss something with you. I want to get it out of my chest. This and this is bothering me. Okay. All right. Now let's say that there was a problem between you and your husband. Okay. And you're angry with him. When you want to speak with your husband, make it a successful conversation, and don't come out there and start saying, for instance, I'm going to give you guys an example. Don't use the word, you did this, you did that. Just pointing your finger like that, the way you're talking to him directly, he's going to forget about what you said and he's just going to focus on the you. Okay. And that's a very negative way of speaking. And you guys can use that also with your children. Like, let's say your husband, he's the type that always throws his clothes around in the bedroom. Okay. Or if he goes to the bathroom, you find water all over the place. Or for instance, when he uses the bathroom, instead of putting the toilet paper in the basket, in the garbage can, I guess he tries to play like a basketball and it just doesn't make it in. Okay. So he did something wrong. You don't come and say, you left your clothes all over the bedroom again. That was so thoughtless of you. So 2 times you use the word you. He's going to forget about all the things you said. He's just going to focus on what? On you. Why don't you do it in another more mannered way, well-mannered way, and do it indirectly and say, I, instead of saying you, say I feel frustrated when I find clothes all over the bedroom at the end of the long day. You didn't say his name. You didn't say you. And you know, subhanAllah, this way doesn't harm people when you speak about them, you know? And even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sometimes he would be with the companions and he wanted to talk about something wrong that X or Y from the people did. And he wouldn't mention that person's name. He wouldn't say, oh, this person did this and that person did that. Just bring it in an indirect way. And especially if you're going to be saying it and your kids are around, when you say you to your husband in a really mean way, no, just bring it up indirectly. And this way your kids really don't know who you're talking about. They might even be thinking you're talking about them. So it's a very well-mannered way of speaking. Okay. It's okay, sister. The sister was saying, Assalamu alaikum, I was at work. Okay, may Allah inshallah reward you. And it's okay. We're all people, we're all humans. Okay? So that's a very important thing. And another thing is when you're speaking with your husband, avoid the what? The criticism. I mean, there's a difference between you complaining and between you criticizing. Notice right now when I said, it's really frustrating for me to find a messy bedroom at the end of a long day. Here I'm complaining to my husband. But if I'm going to criticize him, I'm going to say, it's so frustrating for me to know that you are a slob. Or why are you such a slob? Who raised you? It seems like your mom and dad never raised you. They never taught you to put away your clothes. So this becomes a what? A complaint. Okay, so it becomes a criticism. It becomes criticism. So you have to be very, careful with selecting your words, sisters. And that's very important because a lot of women out there, they don't know how to select their words. And if you learn to select your words in front of your husband, your children will learn how to select the right words. I mean, we've got a problem today with children. They speak in a very disrespectful way. And they just like say it out. And you're like, Mom, that wasn't a respectful way of saying it. I mean, you could have said it this way. Well, they'll learn from you. So just, many times actions, wallahi, sisters, actions are stronger than words. Let your children see how you and your husband are living in this life. And inshallah, I have, trust in Allah that he will do what? He will make your children from the pious, inshallah. Another problem is, and it's like, I think it's like an age-old advice that many people say. They always say you have to solve your problems or your conflicts before you go to bed. I hear it a lot. Even our moms, they tell us this. They tell you, Mom, before you guys go to bed, make sure that you guys both, sleep and there's no conflict between you. Okay, I really do believe that we shouldn't have conflicts because seriously, I can tell you something. I don't know when I put my head on the bed, on my pillow to sleep, I really don't know if I'm going to wake up, or my husband. And we do hear stories about people sleeping and never waking up. And sleep is a small death, by the way. And that's why when you wake up, you say, Alhamdulillah alladhi ahyana. Thank you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you made me come back to life. So I wasn't a small death, sleeping. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have let me sleep and stay sleeping. I remember one of my students, once she came to school and I was like, Azam Allah ajrakum. Her dad died. Allah yarhama. May Allah have mercy on him. And I told her, what happened? Was your dad sick or anything? She said, Dr. Muna, my dad, he just slept and he didn't wake up. So I do believe that, you never know when you're going to die. But let me explain something. A lot of couples, they believe that, you have to resolve the problem before they go to sleep. By the way, sometimes he doesn't feel like talking right now. And you don't feel like talking right now. You want to sleep. So sometimes we want to say sleep on it. You don't necessarily always have to solve your problems before you sleep. But, just, be calm. have your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and get a full night's rest. And maybe the next day you guys will be able to tackle the problem in a more positive attitude. So a lot of times women are like, our wives are like, no, my mom told me that we cannot sleep unless we resolve the problem. We solve the problem. And she's coming to him. She's like, no, we have to solve the problem. He's like, get away from me. I want to sleep. So when you're asleep, when you want to sleep, you want to just khalas, you want to relax. So khalas, there's no need for you to talk about it right now. But there's something important. It doesn't mean that if you slept on the problem and you didn't solve it right away, for you to say, well, let me tell you something. If we don't solve the problem right now, do you know what that means? And your husband's like, yeah, what? You're like, that means I'm not going to sleep in the same bed. I'm going to sleep in a separate bed. No, sisters, never sleep in a separate bed. Never. Even when the Quran was talking to men and teaching them how to resolve their problems with a woman, his wife, it never said in the ayah to sleep in a separate bed. In the same bed, but he turns his body towards the other direction. And this is talking about a woman who is just being barbaric, okay? So for this reason, never separate your bed. Sometimes what happens is just you sleeping next to him. You'll start snuggling and khalas, you'll get it over with. You won't even have to say anything the next day. It will get over. Wear your best clothes, put the best fragrance, and khalas. You just have to learn that sometimes don't sit there and just everything you want to be like a perfectionist about it. Khalas, some things go by just snuggling. Okay, so that's very important that sometimes, yes, you could sleep on a problem with the intention to solve it the next day, because right now you guys are not relaxed and you're not thinking and you're not focusing on what you want to say. And if you really had a good intention, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for you. And just, sleeping next to your partner, it'll just disappear. The whole problem will disappear. So that's a very important thing also. Okay. Avoid arguing in front of kids. Okay. I want to say something. I remember when I was in the university, I had a professor, and his wife also, after she got married and her husband was a professor, he brought his wife to the university, and she was a student with us, okay? And he loved his wife very much, and he was the type that was really, really a very good husband to his wife, and his wife was a very good wife to her husband. And we always used to take them as role models. And his name, by the way, was Abu Tayyib, and her name was Tayyib. So subhanallah, he was teaching us a seerah class, and he was teaching us something. He said, you guys know something? We're like, what? He said, I have a daughter, her name is Haja. And I have a problem, which is that, our household is very calm, very peaceful. And I'm afraid that my daughter, because she doesn't see me and my wife, arguing or anything, and I always treat her in a very nice manner. I'm afraid that when she gets married, because you guys know that there's no perfect men out there. I'm afraid that because she always hears calmness and peacefulness in the house, that maybe one day her husband's going to come home angry and he's going to scream at her. She's going to be like, wait a minute, I never heard my dad scream at my mom. My dad never screamed at me. And she's going to be like shocked. She's not going to know what to do. So he's like, sometimes I would intentionally call my daughter and say, Hajar, in like in a mean way somehow, so that she could get used to sometimes hearing something that she wouldn't want to hear. I'm not saying that you guys have to do that, but we don't need to do that anyways, because we do have arguments in our houses, okay? But here I want to say something. You should try your best to avoid having an argument in front of your children, but let's say they did witness an argument, okay? Here I want to ask you guys something. What would you do if your son or daughter witnessed an argument? I want to hear from you guys. You guys want to show your children that marriage life is no arguments, no conflicts. That way you guys will probably be deceiving them, because they're going to be like, oh, that means when I get married, we're always going to be romantic and no problems and this and that. So what do you guys think? Yes, sister, I think your name is Sister Sukat. Did I say your name right? Sister Sukad? Okay, does anybody want to say something? What would you guys do? Oh, come on, you guys. I mean, I'm sure you guys get into arguments with your husbands, and sometimes it happens unintentionally in front of your children. What would you do if you got into an argument with your husband in front of your children? What do you guys think is the solution to the problem? Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that the problem isn't so much getting into arguments, you know, especially occasional arguments in front of your children.
Yes.
It's more how you model the resolution afterwards.
Yes.
That's the most important thing, because if you model like poor communication, or, you know, like giving each other the silent treatment, or then it's never modeled for them how to effectively resolve the conflict.
Good. So like we're going to try, you said you gave a good point, Sister Noor. So it's like more about how you resolve the argument. The problem is not that they saw the argument, because that's something natural. I mean, I don't want to make it like something natural that you should always argue in front of your children, but sometimes it does happen, okay? Like sometimes even the child will come and say, Mom, I want to do this. And you're like, no. And your husband says, no, it's okay. So that was just a disagreement, and you guys might get into an argument. And by the way, most of the arguments happen between a husband and a wife because of the children, by the way. That's something very important we have to understand. Many of the arguments happen because of the children. And sometimes every one of them has a point of view. So the right thing is that if the son or daughter comes to the mom or the dad and asks, you're supposed to say, well, wait, Mom, I have to discuss this with your dad when he comes home. And the same thing, if the father is there, he's like, well, I have to discuss this with your mom when she comes home, because we're going to make a decision together. That's what we're supposed to do. But if that argument did come up in front of the children, they have to understand that arguments and disagreements are something natural. Nobody's perfect. Arguments also happen in the household of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we are just human. We're not angels. Allah didn't create us as angels. We're human beings. We make our mistakes, but we have to pay attention that it has to be a healthy argument. Nobody hitting, nobody screaming, nobody cursing. That's number one. And number two, if we did kind of get like into a loud voice, or one of us did something wrong, they have to see us apologize to each other. I mean, just like they saw us get into the fight, they have to see how we make up with the fight. And this will teach them a life skill that, okay, arguments and disagreements happen in life. It's okay for us to disagree with each other, but it's not supposed to reach to the extent that we don't talk to each other. And in the future, your son or child, they might disagree with their friends, okay? So here they know that, okay, you have your point of view and I have my point of view. I raised my voice and you raised your voice, but in the end, we're still friends. We still respect each other. And if anybody did something wrong, they have to apologize. So they have to see this healthy argument. Yes, there are healthy arguments. So sometimes there was an argument in front of the child, but they saw how they made up. And this, of course, is teaching them how to have a healthy relationship. Yes. Another thing is, and this has to do with you not speaking up and saying what you have. I'm sorry, let me just go back. Holding grudges. Okay. What is a grudge? A grudge is a strong feeling of anger. Okay. And when you have a grudge against your husband, it just makes you very toxic, and it makes you, it makes a dysfunctional marriage, actually. So you keep putting those grudges in and putting them in you. And like at the end, you're like, listen, for many years, I've been holding these grudges. And right now, you know what I'm going to do? I can't take it anymore. And that's a problem, because many times, and one of the reasons for this is many women think that their husbands read their minds. Yeah, just 1 minute here. Sister Maryam says to argue in front of your children and to solve it in front of them if you are in a healthy relationship. To just 1 minute. In front of them too, if you are in a healthy relationship, answer that you don't yell. I don't understand, Sister Maryam. You want to explain it more? Would you like to explain what you were saying, Sister Maryam? No?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
I
Could you explain?
I was just saying basically what you said. SubhanAllah.
Oh, you were writing what I was saying. Oh, okay.
Well, I typed it, but then you said it, so it's the same. So don't worry about it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You know,
Oh, it's all right. It's all right.
Actually, I wait for the sisters to say, and then I go back to the chats. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
So, okay, so you actually did give a very meaningful answer. Thank you, Sister Maryam, for that.
Yeah.
Like I said, many times what happens to women, like I told you guys, many times they think that their husbands understand what they are. They read their minds. And she's like, you have to understand what you did. No, we said, first of all, get it out of your chest and say what you want to say. Okay. Don't expect your husband. He's got a lot of problems, a lot of responsibilities. Don't expect him to understand what you're going through. And maybe you're holding a grudge against him about something that he doesn't even know that he has, you know? So for this reason, let it out of your chest in a very nice, mannerable way, and don't keep holding grudges. Because what's going to happen in the end, you're just going to explode. And when you explode, you know, what's going to happen is you're going to be saying things you really didn't want to say. Okay. So for this reason, if you want, I think you should always resolve your problems, you know, every week, every weekend. I mean, like I said, you don't have to resolve your problems every day, daily, because sometimes you just don't have that time to sit with each other. But like every week, at least, when you guys go out, remember when I told you guys, you always have to have some kind of mini date, or you have to go out with your husband. There has to be something special between you and your husband. Sometimes it might be hard when your children are young because you can't leave your children behind. But if you could have your child with your mom or with his mom to take care of, you know, with your sister, just for like an hour for you guys to go out, it would be okay. When your children grow up and they can stay at home by themselves, you know, let them see you go out, you know, like you guys go out together with a family. But even your children, they're like, no, mom, can we go this place? And then the other son or daughter says, no, you forgot, today is mom and dad's special day, you know, today they're going to go out with each other. So let them see that. Okay. So when you guys go out, when you're walking, when you're eating in the restaurant, you know, explain what you're going through, you know, speak in a very, very nice, mannerable way. So don't hold grudges, because it's going to make you very toxic. It's going to make the marriage toxic. And in the end, you're going to explode. And many times it causes mental problems because you're putting so much stress on you. Okay. So try to resolve the problems, you know, at least weekly. And then in the end, learn to forgive. You guys, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't close the doors to tawbah. Allah, I mean, you guys picture how many sins we do day and night. And Allah gave us all that He gave, all the blessings He gave us. And with that, Allah forgives us. So we have to learn to forgive. We have to learn to forgive. It doesn't mean when I say to forgive that you don't get your rights. Okay, get your rights and speak about it, but also forgive. I mean, there are so many little things that you can just let go. Because just like you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you, you must also forgive others. So forgive your husband. Maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe he was stressed out, you know? So it's so nice to forgive. And by the way, I can picture forgiving like a balloon. I want you guys to picture a balloon that's all full of air. And that's the way you are when you're holding grudges and when you're really angry. So it's like this balloon. And sometimes you even feel it in your stomach. You feel like your stomach is a balloon and you're about to explode. But then when you forgive, you feel like that balloon, all the air it just came out. So you feel so happy, so relaxed. And you know, subhanAllah, I believe that when a person, it's called in Arabic, al-afu inda al-maqdira. You know, you have the ability to talk back and be mean to him, but you're like, no, I forgave him. And subhanAllah, when you forgive, Allah puts that iman in your heart. He rewards you with the iman. He rewards you with the sabr. He rewards you with the patience. I'm not saying if your husband did something wrong, don't explain it to him. But, you know, like the big concerns, the big problems, speak about them. And the little things, just let them go, sisters. Okay? Don't hold grudges against your husband. Okay. Another thing is keep a sense of humor, you know? I mean, everybody's got their flaws and their defects. Every single one of you guys, me, you, your husbands, all of us have one of those problems that we just can't get out of. Like, for instance, let's give an example. Like, let's say that there was a wife and she's always losing her eyeglasses. Okay. So her husband knows that she just tends, that's like something that she has in her nature. She's always looking for her eyeglasses. So he just comes and he starts putting it for her in a safe place. And she's like, did you see my eyeglasses? He's like, yeah, I put it for you here. It's a nice sense of humor, you know? Instead of just saying, how many times did I teach you this? And how many times did I teach you that? And you'll never change. And no, I'm not talking about the big things, but you guys, all of us have our flaws. All of us have our defects. All of us, we're not perfect. And there, I guess that there's some things that it's hard to change. So just make it like, have a good sense of humor. Okay. Just laugh in his face. Don't laugh at him. Laugh with him and let it go. And like they say, go with the flow. Just let it go. I mean, don't just sit there on everything. All right. So that's very important. Okay. So keep a sense of humor. Okay. This is very, very important also. Be a family uniter. Let me see what I've gotten them. I am the only Muslim in my home, and it's been very hard to try to change into this new mindset. I needed this. Thank you, sister. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wa iyyakum. You know, we're sisters for each other. And that's why it's so important to always be around a good community, a good Muslim community, because we need each other. Okay. And that's what's going to bring up the new point that I want to talk about. You guys, we need each other. Okay. We cannot be far away from the family. We can't, whether it's his family or my family. So we're talking actually about the in-laws. So for this reason, I want to tell you guys something. Never, sisters, always be a family uniter and never be a family divider. Never, never. It's called yani namima, always trying to make people angry with each other and causing fitna. Never do that. And that's why in Islam, by the way, you guys know it's haram. It's a big sin in Islam to lie. There's not even something called a white lie. Okay. There's no such thing as a white lie. And there's no such thing as April Fool's Day. But there are two cases where a Muslim is allowed to lie. And you know, it's in Islam, it's permissible. What is it, for instance? Like if somebody brings you a gift and it's not really that nice, or you ate somebody's food, they cooked something and it's not that delicious, but you're like, oh, thank you. It really tastes well. Okay, so that you don't hurt their feelings. That's okay. In Arabic, it's called mujamala. Okay, so you're just like trying to show that person that you respect what they did for you. Okay, or oh, that dress looks really nice on you, but it really doesn't look nice on you. So that's okay. Another thing is, if two people were fighting, they were disputing, and you heard her side of the story, and you heard his side of the story, and they both talked about each other in a really bad way, you don't come to this person and say, well, do you know what that person said about you? Do you know what they said about? They said this and that. And then you come to the other side and you say, well, do you know what your sister-in-law said about you? She said this and that. Don't say that. Here it's permissible for you to say, well, I don't know why you're really angry with your mother-in-law, but you know, the other day she mentioned you in a really nice way. And she said she really loves you and she's proud of you being her son's wife and this and that. So for this reason, if in Islam, it's okay to lie so that you do not cause chaos and dividing the people. So for this reason, you have to be careful very much. And you have to understand that not every family has the same things. I mean, families are different from each other. His family doesn't necessarily have to be like your family, okay? And all families have good things and bad things. So you have to adopt the good things and leave the bad, ignore the bad. But in the end, you and your husband have to agree on something, that whether it's my family, and pay attention to what I said, whether it's my family or yours. Why did I say pay attention to my family? Because there are a lot of women out there, they're like, no, my family is not like your family. My family is perfect. No, all families have their, good sides and they have their bad sides, but we have to agree with each other. In the end, we are raising a new generation and they are our children. And we have to learn something, that whether it's from my family or yours, we always take the good and we always leave the bad. But I would never be the one to divide the family. I would never come and start talking about my husband's brother and making him not speak to him. And this is a big problem, by the way, sisters. We've got women that are married. She doesn't talk to her mother-in-law. She doesn't talk to her sister-in-law. He doesn't talk to his brother-in-law. This is a problem. So always be uniters and never be dividers. And I want to tell you guys something. Many times husbands don't speak to people from his family because of the wife. And I told you guys last time when I said, yes, the husband is like a head, but you are the neck. And some of you guys didn't understand what I was trying to say. But what I was trying to say is that women are very powerful. And yes, he has the head, but without a neck, he can't move right or wrong. So we do inspire them. We really do make a difference in what they believe in. So never be the one to make your husband not go to his rahim. You guys know that there's something called silat al-rahim. I mean, you cannot break the rahim. He has to go to his blood relatives. He has to visit his mom. He has to visit his brother. He has to visit his sister, his niece, his nephew. Okay, so this is a problem. You know, you have to respect them. I know you're going to hear words. Sometimes they're going to just aggravate you. Come on, you guys, you're doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not just for your husband. You're doing it for Allah. I mean, what are you going to benefit when you make your family and your husband's family not speak with each other? In the end, don't you guys like to go out to your family's houses? You know, who your children are going to go and visit? If your dad is angry with his uncle and you're angry with the mother-in-law, you know, you're doing qata' rahim. So for this reason, always keep, I don't have to say an excellent relationship, but at least a good relationship. Okay, so it's for you, for your children, for your parent, for you and for your children, actually. Okay, and before all of that, for Allah, because you do not want to be a person that divides the family, because you are going to be taken accountable with that. Okay, and here when we're talking about your relationship with your in-laws, you will never criticize your spouse's family. Never. We have to pay attention to two things, okay? Never make fun of your husband's family, because, you know, that's a way to aggravate him. And he also should never make fun of your family. And here I want to say another thing. And you yourself never talk about your family. So again, don't make fun of your husband's family, and your husband's not supposed to make fun of your family. And you don't put your family down. I mean, there are a lot of women out there. She's like, you know, you're my hero. You saved me from my family. My family used to do this and that. You guys, I want to tell you something. Okay, maybe your husband is a hero, and he saved you from a lot of bad things that your family was doing to you. And he respected you maybe more than your brother did. But let me tell you something. If you keep letting your husband hear you talking about your family, well, in the beginning, he might be standing up for your family and saying, no, your mom's a really nice person. Your dad's a really nice person. But later on, what's going to happen? When you get in an argument, he's going to be like, well, didn't you say that I was better than your mom and dad? Go back to your mom's house. They're not respecting you like me. And that's going to make a bitter relationship. So for this reason, this is very important. Don't talk about your family no matter what in front of your husband. Never do that. It's not good for you, and it's not good for your family. And never talk about your husband in front of your family. This is another problem, and I said it last time, because when you start to complain about your husband in front of your family, what's going to happen? As time goes by, they're not going to respect him, and he's going to feel it. I mean, you guys want your parents to always respect your husband. So that's a problem. And here I want to say another very important thing that happens. Sorry to say this, but I want you guys, if you are mothers right now, or if you are in the future grandparents, let me tell you something. I'm sure that you guys all love your children, but please, please, even if you visit your daughter, this usually happens between the mother and her daughter. Usually, she comes and she starts talking about her daughter's husband. Okay, and she keeps saying, your husband is this, your husband is, he's not a nice person, he's disrespectful, and he doesn't make money, and I didn't marry you off to him so that you would live this kind of life. So what happens to the girl? She's listening to her mom, and her mom is putting all those negative thoughts into her, and she's getting all stressed out. And then when she goes home, she starts to get that stressed out into her who? Into her husband. And then her husband notices that every time she goes to her parents' house, she comes back stressed and she's annoyed. So he's going to say, listen, my house is sacred. If every time you're going to go to your parents' house, you're going to come back like this, I don't want you to go to your parents' house. So here I want to say something. If you want to visit your parents and you want your husband to let you visit your parents, then please, what you hear at their house, you keep it there. You don't bring it back with you. I mean, every time you visit your parents' house, of course, you're going to find problems between your husband, your brother and his wife, between your sisters. Your mom is angry with your dad, and this and that, or your mom's angry with her mother-in-law. Sister, please help your parents at home and keep it there. Don't bring your problems home. This is something I always say. Never bring your problems home with you, and never take your problems to work with you. I have to say this. Like, let's say you are a teacher or you work somewhere. Khalas, this is amana. When you reach your work, forget about all the problems you have at home. Just focus on your work. Don't let anybody, notice anything. Be a strong woman. Also, when you come home, whether it's husband and wife, keep your problems at work. Don't bring it home. You have to know how to what? Like, what do they call it? It's like, like shift, like shift. There's a work shift and there's a home shift.
Like
you have to be able to do that. Okay.
Compartmentalize.
What is it called, please?
Compartmentalize.
Again, please.
Yeah, compartmentalize. Like putting things into, compartments.
Different compartments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the work is a compartment and home is a compartment. That's very important because a lot of people, they bring their problems with them. So if you are able to be strong, you guys know that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "Al-mu'minu al-qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allah min al-mu'min al-da'if." So the strong Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes him more than the weak Muslim. And I really do believe that if you can do this and you can keep your problems outside the house, I think you're a really strong person because you're able to control your feelings. So this is very important, and it causes a lot of problems. And may Allah forgive a lot of mothers out there, whether it's the mother of the husband or the mother of the wife. And please, you guys, when you become mother-in-laws, please don't do this. When your daughter comes or your son comes, don't start giving them negative things about their wives or husbands. Don't do that. I mean, they're human beings. So you're just getting there saying all this kind of stuff and you're stressing them out. And then at home, when they go home, they're going to explode. And let me tell you something. If you're not able to change that in your mom, you have to tell your mom, please, mom, you shouldn't tell me this kind of stuff because it affects me. And if she still doesn't listen, then I can't tell you can't visit your mom. But please, because if your husband feels that, he's going to tell you don't go. So try to control your feelings and just be like, okay, that's the way life is. Problems are everywhere. I just have to learn to try to do my best and change the problems that they have. But I am not going to bring this problem home for my husband. Here you're making two problems. And Allah didn't say that you have to bring a problem home. It doesn't mean if you want to solve your parents' problems or your brother's problem or your sister's problem that you have to bring it home. Because here you've got what? Two problems. So that's very important. I want you guys to pay attention. Okay. And another thing is with your in-laws, like the Prophet ﷺ said, tahadu, tahabbu. So, I mean, when you give them presents, that will make you have more love between you. I mean, it makes the relationship stronger. So like if you feel like your sister-in-law is jealous of you or something, okay, bring her a present. Bring your mother-in-law presents. Make her feel that she's just like your own mom. Okay. So here you get the ajr and the reward of the sunnah because the Prophet ﷺ said, give gifts to one another and you will love one another. And at the same time, you're making stronger bonds and stronger ties between you and your in-laws. And I'm sure that when people see you having a strong relationship, I'm sure that your husband is happy. I have to tell you guys something. I mean, when you guys are respectful to your husband's relatives, he will thank you for that. You know, respecting his mom and his sister and his brother, that's respect for him. And disrespecting them is disrespect for him. So that's very important. You know, I mean, my mother-in-law, may Allah have mercy on her, I never got to know her. She died before I got married. But my husband really likes his aunt, which is his mother's sister. And he used to always, you know, visit her, and he treats her like a mother. And you guys know that even in Islam, your aunt from your mother's side is like your mother, okay? So when he goes to his aunt's house, he kisses her hand, and I do the same, because I look to her as not just my husband's aunt, she to him is like a what? Is like a mother. So for this reason, you know, we have to learn to respect the family members of our husband. And also, you guys have to pay attention. She's not just your mother-in-law. She is the grandmother of your children. So when you're treating her in a very bad way, and you're telling her this and that, and you're screaming at her, what do you expect your children to treat their grandmother at? When you're talking about your sister-in-law, which is the wife of your children's uncle, and you teach them respect, how are they going to respect her when you're not respecting her? So you should not allow any time for even your husband to talk about his brother, or for you to talk about your sister in front of your children, because that's going to make them disrespect them, you know? So that's very important, okay? So you're teaching them relationships. Here's another problem. Don't try to keep up with the what? With the, what's that word? The Jonases. What's Jonases? It's a slang word for desires, okay? And you guys all know that everybody has their desire. If you're living in a small apartment, you want a bigger house. If you're living in an ordinary house, you want a mansion, okay? And I have to tell you something. One of the worst problems that you could make in your house is to have an economical crisis. You know, like how you have to avoid diseases. You guys remember the COVID, how everybody was like, you know, cleaning their hands and taking care not to get the COVID virus. Well, let me tell you something. One of the biggest viruses out there, one of the biggest destroying things of the houses is what? Being in debt. I mean, I want you guys to picture your husband always having to think about the debts that he has. That's a big problem. So for this reason, we have to understand something. It's not always having a mansion or an expensive house that's going to make you happy. Okay, every single one of us wants these things, but you don't get everything you want. You have to understand that. And I'm not saying that you should not strive to achieve your goals. No, it's really nice to have a goal that, like, in the year 2029, for instance, I'm planning on living in a mansion. That's okay. But without me causing debt, without me having to go to the bank to get riba, to get interest. So for this reason, we have to understand something. I mean, I might be in a small apartment, but I feel cozy and happy and as if it's paradise, more than if I was living in a big, huge, humongous mansion. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you're in a big house, you're happy. I know a lot of people that are really rich and they're not happy. And there are a lot of people that are poor and they are happy. You know, subhanAllah, one of the experiences I had, even though I was born and raised in America and I lived there, you know, I was born in America and I lived there until the age of 16. But I did have the ability also that I lived also in Saudi Arabia, okay? Like I told you, sisters, I worked in Saudi Arabia for 4 years in the Medina al-Munawwara. I used to teach in Tarbiyah University. So I lived in a place where there was, you know, wealth, okay? And also when I was getting my PhD, I lived in Cairo, Egypt. I lived in Egypt. That's where I got my PhD in tafsir. True, I was living in a neighborhood that was, you could say it was a really nice neighborhood in Egypt. But I also had the ability, you know, one of the experiences I experienced was, you know, when I would go to Cairo, I would see people that were really, really poor, okay? And subhanAllah, one of the things I noticed was it's not how much wealth you have, it's the contentment. And that's going to come up right now. I mean, I used to see people living in Egypt that were from the poorest people, but they were always happy and joking and happy about life. And you would just sit with them, and you would just, you would find it really exciting and amusing to sit with them, even though they were very poor and they really didn't have a lot of things, okay? But they were happy. And sometimes you would be living with, seeing people that were rich in Saudi Arabia, for instance, but they were miserable. And they had the mansions and they had this and that, but they had problems. I'm not trying to say that money doesn't make you happy. I mean, you could be happy and have money, and you could be miserable and not have money. But what I'm trying to reach to is, money is not everything. Sometimes just the peacefulness, being cozy together. Sometimes the good thing about small houses is you feel cozy and you see each other. But sometimes when you've got a humongous mansion, you're looking for your children and they're far away, and you don't feel that you've got those strong bonds with each other. And that's why a long time ago, if you noticed, like the family used to be in like one room, two rooms, but they were always happy and together and living with each other, okay? And they felt for each other. So for this reason, don't build your happiness, sisters, on what's going to come tomorrow. Just live your life and enjoy it. Because you always thinking that the happiness is if you have this or if you have that, or no, just be happy with what you've got and always look to the people that are of lower status. Many times I'm sure people used to complain, but now when you see, for instance, what's happening in Gaza, people with no houses, not even with tents, and they're being bombed and this and that, you start saying, oh my God, alhamdulillah, at least I'm in a house. At least I have water. At least I have a place to sleep. So for this reason, many of the things that you feel you just take them for granted, many people are just asking for those basic things. So for this reason, don't feel miserable. Don't feel like you're any less than anybody else because you're not living in a mansion. Strive for it. Inshallah, Allah will give it to you in the halal way. But don't say, I'm going to stop the happiness until I get this and that. Just live be happy with what Allah gave you. Isn't this called rida? Isn't this called, having faith in the qada and the qadar? So for this reason, always have content. Another thing is, a lot of times people, they're willing to go and get themselves in debt by what? By interest or riba. And you guys all know that getting riba is a big haram in Islam. And Allah mentioned it in Surah Al-Baqarah. فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Would you guys like to be in a war against Allah and His Prophet just for getting riba, just for buying a house with interest or buying a car with interest? Sisters, I know there are a lot of things out there. We have a lot of desires and we want a lot of things. And I know that banks out there make it so easy to own a house. Okay? It's so easy. Just go get a loan from the bank. They're making it so easy for you. But we have to understand something. Haram is haram. And interest is going to take out the barakah of your marriage. So for this reason, never buy anything with interest, even if it means you're not going to get the home that you want or the car that you want. Always have sabr and patience. And like Allah said, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. When you are God-fearing and you keep you don't do something haram because you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will open the doors of halal for you, inshallah. So inshallah, you will buy this house, you will buy this car, but in a halal way. So this is what causes a lot of misery in the houses. And if you ask a lot of women, why is your husband always angry? Why are there always problems? Because he's in debt. So economical problems, they cause the husband and the wife to just not feel happy. And many times it's in your hands because you had to go get into debt for something that was not really important. You could get away with, you could do without it. If there was something you had to go get into a debt for because it was important, that's something else. May Allah help you. But for just having a bigger house or this and that, or going for a traveling, no, you don't have to travel overseas to be happy. You could go somewhere close, locally, and you could be happy. So don't bring loans for your husband. Don't keep nagging. I want this. My friend has this. Why don't you do this and that for me? No, sisters. I mean, try to get better economically, Maybe you can get a second job. Maybe you can help him. There are a lot of things to do, but please don't put your husband in debt, because it's all going to get out on you, because he's going to be very, very uncomfortable with that. Another thing is only complain to Allah and be grateful. I mean, okay, I want to tell you guys something, and this is a big problem with a lot of women because they're emotional. I mean, not always women know how to choose the right person to complain to. And sometimes they go and complain like they're working somewhere, and they'll go complain about their life to somebody out there. And I don't find it suitable for people to know your life, because maybe you were angry, maybe you were disappointed, maybe you were feeling depressed at that time, and you let your colleague know about something that was happening to you personally. But then the next day will come and you'll forget about it, and then you'll be like, I wish I never told her that, because now she knows what my personal life is. Sisters, please think 1,000 times before you complain your husband or anything that has to do with your personal life. Think 1,000 times. And let me tell you something, people are not going to really do things for you. Most people. I can't say nobody does. I mean, if there was a person that was pious and had taqwa, maybe they will instruct you. They would give you some good advice on what to do. So for this reason, you have to be very, careful. But what happens is, you're just letting it out, and that's it. They're not going to do anything for you. You're just letting your personal life out. I mean, picture Prophet. I'm not going to tell who he is, but you guys all know the ayah in Surah Yusuf. And one of the prophets said, "Innama ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah," which translates to, I only complain of my suffering and my grief to Allah. Who said that, sisters? Who was the prophet who said that? Who do you guys think it was? He said, yes,
Yusuf's father.
Yes, exactly.
Prophet Yaqub.
Yes, Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam. And you guys know that his sons took Prophet Yusuf from him, and they said that he was killed or he was eaten by the fox and this and that, and they came up with a story. And so what did he say? He said, "Innama ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah." I mean, when you guys complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your needs, you are complaining to the one, I don't want to say the person, the one who everything is in his hands. He can change everything. I mean, Allah is the Razzaq. If you're complaining money, he can give you. He can give you the children. He's the one who can change everything in your life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for this reason, we have to make it a habit in us that when I feel really bad, and if you really want to get something off of your chest, just say it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at the same time, be grateful. I mean, no husband out there wants a wife that's always whining and always complaining. I mean, that is just so nagging. Always complaining. We don't have this. We don't have that. Look at your children. Come on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will increase you. So don't you want Allah to increase you? There's something you want, just say alhamdulillah. When you say alhamdulillah, Allah gives you even what? You get ajr and Allah gives you more, sisters. So for this reason, it's very important to complain to Allah, be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and remember that you are not going to have everything. You guys were not in the Jannah. A lot of people, their mindset is, they think that they're supposed to get everything in the Jannah. I'm sorry, in this world, in this dunya. That's a wrong mindset, because we have to understand that this world is a test. It's not a reward. Okay? The reward in the Jannah. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may reward us some things in this world, but he's not going to give us everything. I usually write it down as if I'm talking to someone and burn it and get rid of it. It really helps me to let things out. SubhanAllah. Okay, so you, Sister Fariza, I understand that you're trying to say that sometimes you have a journal, right? Is that what you're trying to say, Sister Fariza?
Assalamualaikum, Sheikha. Yes, I do, but I don't keep it. I just get rid of it so nobody knows it. Nobody's gonna read it.
SubhanAllah. Yeah, because if it's going to stay in the journal, people are going to know about it. That's a good way to do journaling. And sometimes when you write it down and you see it, you look to it from different angles. And sometimes after you write it, you're like, is it worth me getting angry about it? right? Like sometimes when it's in your thoughts, you think of it as something really big, but when you get it out and you write it down, you're like, it wasn't that big as I thought it was, you know?
Yes, sometimes I don't even want to read back it. Yeah, it doesn't make
Yeah,
sense sometimes.
right? But I'm not trying to tell you guys that you are not supposed to talk to your spouse. You're not, I mean, he's your spouse, he's your partner. And I'm sure that, of course, sometimes you complain to him. But what I'm trying to teach you is even your spouse sometimes cannot change things, okay? There are things that are only in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So always complain to Allah and be grateful with what you have, okay? And at the same time, I want you guys to pay attention. This has to do with it. That sometimes it's the opposite, you know, Allah's giving you a lot of good things. And here, if Allah gives you a lot of good things, because we're not just talking about people complaining, sometimes you've got people that have a lot of blessings out there. And instead of just thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they go out there and they start bragging about it. Oh, me and my husband do this, me and my husband do that. You know, I remember once when I was a teacher at school, I had some of my you know, fellow teachers in the room. And excuse me for this language, but one of the sisters, that one of the teachers, she was talking about her relationship with her husband, and this was wrong for her to say. And you guys all know that, okay, sometimes you might talk about some things that happen in your house, but I mean that personal relationship between you and your husband, of course you're not supposed to talk about. But anyways, she did talk about it in front of the other sisters, and she started to say that, you know, between her and her husband, every night they have sexual intercourse, okay? So after she left, she went to her class. I was sitting with one of the sisters, and she just looked to me and she said, I want to ask you a question, sister. You know, Sister Muna. I told her, go ahead. She's like, you know, that teacher, she was talking about her relationship between her and her husband. And she, you know, she made me feel like they're so romantic and every night they sleep with each other and this and that. She's like, now I feel like me and my husband, we don't love each other. I was like, let me tell you something. First of all, what she said was wrong. She wasn't supposed to say something like that between her and her husband. And number two, since she did say it, I have to tell you something. Never compare you and your husband with somebody else. You know, love has many languages, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be physical contact. So in her heart, she kind of like, she's like jealous. You get what I'm trying to say? So she felt the jealousy. Well, why is my husband not romantic like her husband? So for this reason, what I'm trying to get to, sisters, is if Allah gives you a blessing, there's no need for you to, every time something happens, to go post it on the Facebook or on Instagram. And this is causing a lot of problems in families. Today I cooked this. So you take a picture of it and you post it. Today, me and my husband went to this place. Today, my son memorized this surah. Today, this and that. Okay, I mean, you could put some of your achievements, but you don't really have to necessarily share everything, because there is something called the evil eye, which is called ayn. And there is something called hasad, وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا hasad. And not all those people out there are good-hearted. Many of them are ill-hearted. And so there is something called hasad. Of course, we should do our part and do the, read Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas. But at the same time, not all the people out there are happy people. There are many women out there that have problems with their husbands, and they will get jealous when they hear this kind of talk. So for this reason, there's no need to brag about your, I don't want to say perfect life, because I really don't believe that there is a perfect life out there. Okay. But there's no need to talk about your relationship with your husband out there, because there are a lot of people who are struggling with their lives. Yes, Sister Maryam.
You made me think of sometimes, like, when you complain, it's not a complaint, like, it's not meant to be a complaint. It's meant to be like a way to find a solution to a problem. Right. And by wanting to resolve the problem, you're complaining of your situation. And you just made me think of like something that happened way before, when I was trying to get married. Yes. And this is exactly what happened. You complain about the situation without knowing, like, you're searching for a solution. And right. Then, subhanAllah, my big realization was that, like, nobody can give you the answer that you want, like, if you're seeking to them. But if you seek to Allah, Allah is going to give you your answer.
Yes,
but
because
everyone has an opinion. Everyone's gonna say whatever they want to say or they need to
yes,
say because they're not in your
they're
specific
not in your
place.
footsteps. No,
Yeah.
they're not. Well, I
Uh-huh.
want to ask you, Sister Maryam, did you get married?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Not, well, not with this
Alhamdulillah.
man, but alhamdulillah, I got 2 kids, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
You know, I'm not trying to say that we should not be sisters with one another and feel for one another, but let me tell you something. Wallahi, not even your mom, not even your mom, she can put herself in your footsteps. Nobody feels what you're feeling like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
SubhanAllah, yeah.
Especially when you go through big trials and challenges in life, just learn to say it to Allah. Yes. Now, sister, thank you, Sister Maryam. Thank you, Sister Maryam, very much. And here, sister, that's a sickness that's killing us today. I don't know, Sister Aminati, are you talking about the jealousy or what? What did you mean by the sickness here? The evil eye or the jealousy or us trying to post everything?
Yes, posting everything on
Yes.
social media.
Yes. You know, I want to tell you something, Sister Aminati, and I'm saying this to everybody in front of me. You might be surprised, but I really don't have a Facebook, actually. I finished my master's. I never posted anything. I finished my PhD. I never posted anything. I went to conventions. I did things. I never posted them. I got married. I never posted it. I really don't think that my personal life has to be out there, and I'm not waiting for anybody to clap for me. You know, I'm doing it for Allah in the end. And, you know, sometimes always posting things other than the ayn and the hasad, it leads to something else. It sometimes leads to the small shirk. You know, riya. You guys know what riya is? It's like sometimes you do things not for Allah, but you do it to get praised by people. And you guys all know that if you do something for people, you will not get the ajr, you will not get the reward, because we must sincerely do anything we do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You find people, like for instance, I made Umrah many times, probably 20 times when I lived in Saudi Arabia, okay? And I did my Hajj, alhamdulillah. I never thought about posting myself next to the Kaaba. Sometimes what happens, I'm not saying it's wrong, don't misunderstand me, but sometimes it leads to every time you achieve something, you want to show off. You're like, oh, I went to make Hajj. Oh, I went to make Umrah. Oh, I memorized the Quran. Oh, I did this and that. And it leads sometimes to Riyah. So for this reason, sisters, we have to learn that not everything in our personal life has to be known. You don't have to, I mean, even when you get married, sometimes there are even things that your sister doesn't need to know about you. I'm sorry to say this. So for this reason, we have to know, we have to, and I told you guys that about social media, you and your spouse have to get together and decide on what you want to post and what you don't want to post, what you want to be known and what you don't want to be known, okay? Why don't people go out there and post the bad things that happen to them? And that's another problem. You know, it causes sometimes jealousy. Why? Because you're sitting there scrolling and you're seeing, oh, look at where they went. Oh, that's so romantic. Oh, they went to the Caribbeans. Oh, they went to this and that. Look at her children. Look at her mother-in-law. Look at how happy they are. And sometimes it even happens with YouTube. You guys have to understand something. When people are posting things on YouTube, or for instance, they're making a video or they're posting something on Instagram or on Facebook, they're only showing one side of the story, the happy side. Nobody's going to come and post, oh, me and my husband got in a fight today. Oh, this and that happened to me. And so a lot of people, especially teenagers out there, they're looking at there and they're like, oh, look at my friend's life. Look at them. They're so happy. Why, you know, why is my life like this? And they start to have jealousy and they start to compare. We must explain to our children. And before you explain to them, you have to understand this, that nobody has a perfect life. Even if outside you see that it's a perfect life. You know, I can tell you guys something, as being, studying Sharia, many times sisters come to me because alhamdulillah, I ask Allah because they have like trust in me that inshallah I will give them the right advice. But sometimes you have sisters coming to you, if you look to them from the outside, you're like, mashallah, the beauty, she's beautiful, her husband's beautiful, handsome, they have children, they're living in a mansion, they're this and that, and you probably out there think that they have no problems. But then she comes to me and she starts crying, and I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, me and my husband, we can't stand each other. But you just posted on the Facebook, you and your husband holding hands with each other. She's like, that's just on the Facebook. But you know something? When I go home, it's like hell. He can't stand me and I can't stand him. I want to tell you guys something, sisters. Don't think anybody out there has a perfect life. The only difference is that some people, they don't say what happens, okay? They don't say what's happening in their life. So, and it's none of our business to ask them about their personal life. It's just some people are better at keeping their personal life personal, and others are not better at that. So we have to be, be cautious of that. It's very important, okay? Yes, Sister Aisha, would you like to say something? Sister Aisha?
Salam alaikum. I'm sorry. That was an accident. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I accidentally unmuted myself. I unmuted that.
No, it's okay. It's no reason, no reason to apologize. Okay. Let me see if somebody else. So some people put like people tearing and crying. Okay, we don't have so much to go. We just have 3 more. So is it okay, sisters? I know it's 5:01, but we probably just need like 10 more minutes to finish the last 4 that are left. Is that okay with you guys? Is it okay?
Yes, please.
Are you guys fine with it? Okay.
Yes.
Because I don't want to go back to it again, because next week, inshallah, I want to talk about more of like the children, okay? Number 25 is have a mentor in marriage, okay? A mentor. I mean, you guys, we have to get advice. We do need each other. We do. I mean, we're not perfect. We don't know everything. And I told you guys in the beginning that tarbiyah and parenting and marriage, it's like, okay, sometimes it comes in fitrah, in nature, but a lot of it, we have to learn it, okay? And sometimes you just don't, I mean, these are things you don't learn in school. That's the problem. These things, you don't learn them in school. Even if you've got a PhD, you don't learn how to parent in these things. So it's more of like experience and getting to know people that have more good advice to give you. So it's okay to have a mentor. But before going to anybody, I really do believe that you can do it privately without going to anybody these days. Like, for instance, go on the YouTube. I mean, take courses in general, read books, go on to the YouTube and listen to people that really do understand this kind of thing and take their, advice. Okay. But here I just want to say something. First of all, you have to go against your ego and don't think that because you're a parent, you understand everything. And because you're married, you understand everything about marriage. Because marriage is not just the physical closeness between a husband and a wife. It's a whole school. It's a madrasa. You need to learn a lot of things. Number 2, if you do happen to get any kind of marital advice, I want you guys to pay attention to 3 things. Number 1, if you're going to seek that marital advice, go to people who are successful, because I mean, how are you going to go to people that they themselves have problems? But here I want to say something, by the way. I mean, sometimes people could have problems, but because they learn from their problems, you can learn from them. I mean, you don't have to always necessarily be a successful mother to teach people. Sometimes you went through a lot of problems in life that gave you experience. So it depends on what you're taking, okay? And number 2, don't take it from newlyweds. I mean, always when you want to get marital advice, take it from somebody who's been married for a while at least, so that you can, get their experience. Because these 2 newlyweds, maybe at the beginning, they don't have children, they don't have too much experience. So you're not really going to benefit so much from them. So you have to choose wisely who you're going to listen to. And here, this is very important. Here,
sorry to interrupt you, Sister Muna.
Yes, sister. Yes.
I wanted to interrupt you on this. Like, I have a important question on that. Like, what about sisters who are like therapists, and what do you say to that? Like, if that's the case, that working on your own marriage, if you really haven't passed that, like, where okay, you went through the problems and you solved it and you're beyond that now, then you're giving others advice. But what if you're still yourself haven't reached there? Can somebody like that still be a therapist to others?
Yes, I want to tell you something, Sister Naima. Even if that person himself was a therapist, Sometimes you don't see, you only see from your angle. But sometimes when you come to a consultant and you explain, sometimes it's like that ego and you're like, I don't need a therapist. I am a therapist. Wallahi, Sister Naima, many times I can tell you this. Many times I'm like, and I'm telling you as a professor in the university, you're like, sometimes, you have students coming to you and you're solving their problems. And many times you're like, I solve people's problems. I can't solve my own problem. And you're giving women advice and you're not able to solve your problem. So we have to understand something. It doesn't mean if you're a therapist, you know it all. وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. There's always somebody who knows more than you. Another person will see from the angle that you don't see from. So never be arrogant. Never think that you don't need anybody to help you. And that's a big problem. And that's why the first thing I wrote here was what? I just want you guys to pay attention to it. It says Muslims need to have marital mentors. Okay. So sometimes you need it. Okay. So don't feel discouraged. Don't feel embarrassed about that. So sometimes, yes, you do need to listen to other people, even if you are a mentor. Sometimes you're a doctor, but you need to go to another doctor. Do you guys know something? I don't know. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I heard. Like, that sometimes when you go to a therapist and I want you guys to picture like a therapist working from 9 to 5. Picture how many people come and talk about their problems in front of that therapist. Okay. So what happens is like sometimes you get all these negative feelings and like sometimes you go home because you listen to so many people and their problems. So you get stressed out. But I heard, and I'm not sure if that's right, that sometimes therapists have to sit with other therapists so that they don't get on the long term affected by the negative things they hear from people. Is that right? Can anybody tell me if that's right or wrong? But that's what I heard. I don't know if any of you guys studied psychology.
Yeah, I heard that too. As a matter of fact, my husband and I used to watch this show about this therapist, and he was the type of therapist that would counsel other therapists.
Good. See? So what I'm saying is right. Yes. So a therapist needs a therapist. A mentor needs a mentor. I'm a teacher, but I'm a student to my other teacher. Even Prophet Muhammad sallallahu he was a teacher, but he used to learn from who? From Jibreel alayhi salam. So for this reason, we're not supposed to be arrogant, and we're not supposed to think that, okay, if I solve people's problems, I don't need anybody to solve mine. No, we do need each other. Okay. But here, so thank you, Sister Naima, for what you asked and what you said, because you made a really good point about that. But here I want to talk about the therapist or the person or the mentor that you want to go back to, okay? You have to understand that if you go to a therapist or a mentor, whatever it is, because I'm sorry, sometimes you need a mentor and sometimes you need a therapist, because sometimes you might have like mental problems or, well, actually, you don't have to go to a therapist to have a mental problem. I mean, therapists are in some way like a mentor. Well, anyways, if you choose something, you have to pay attention that person, number one, it has to be very wise and discreet. And what I mean by discreet, very confidential, because you have to go to somebody that you know is not going to embarrass you or tell your secrets to somebody else. Those are two very important things. A person that's discreet, he keeps the information he heard confidential between you and him. And number two, they will not embarrass you while you're speaking. So you will feel very comfortable speaking to them. And that has to be a person that's, has deen and taqwa, right? And the next thing is, I want you guys to pay attention is, I know you guys are living in the West, but I have to tell you something. Alhamdulillah, today in the West, you've got Muslims that are well qualified therapists out there. I want to tell you something. It's better to go to a Muslim professional. Why? Because sometimes you're going to be asking them about things, and okay, maybe that non-Muslim is going to give you some kind of some kind of advice, and they're well-meaning, they have good intentions, but spiritually they're clueless. And so sometimes they might prescribe something haram for you, And here, yeah, Sister Maryam, I'm going to get to you. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to give you an example. Like sometimes you might go to a therapist that's a non-Muslim, and you're like, listen, let me tell you something. I have problems with my husband in the bedroom. We just don't sleep with each other. We don't feel for each other. So she's a non-Muslim. So what is she going to say? She'll probably say, okay, no problem. You guys should watch pornography together. You know, watch bad X-rated movies, rated R movies. Okay. And that will make you guys feel for each other. And you will have, you know, you'll be better in the bed together. But that's haram. You get what I'm saying? So that's the problem about it. I mean, they're not Muslims, so they might be prescribing things that are prohibited in Islam. So for this reason, always try to live in a Muslim community. And I really do think that now there are a lot of Muslims in America, a lot of Muslims in Canada, you guys. So I really do believe that you can be in a good Muslim community with people that are Muslims and they majored in something and they're just more than they're more than qualified to be good therapists. So try to look for Muslims out there that are well qualified, because I'm sure you're not going to be asking a non-Muslim for advice in something that has to do with, you know, spiritually, has to do with your religion. So that's very important. And here I want to say, before I go to Sister Maryam's question in the chat, that I remember I was born and raised in Georgia, you guys. I was born in the South and I lived there for 9 years. And at that time in Georgia, there weren't a lot of Muslims. There wasn't a big Muslim community. So what did my parents do? They moved to Virginia. We moved to Washington, D.C., where there was a Muslim environment. And I was studying in an Islamic school. So it's not wrong. I mean, if you guys feel that you're living in a state where there's not a really good Muslim community out there, it's okay. You can move to another one. Okay. But you really do need a good Muslim community. Yes, Sister Maryam. You're more than welcome to speak, Sister Maryam. Sister Maryam? Or did you send it in the chat? I'm not sure. Let me see. No, Sister Maryam. Okay, when you're ready, Sister Maryam, just feel free to speak. Okay, I'm going to go on, but when you want to speak, go on. Okay, so that's a very important thing. Another important thing is you have to, this is very important, okay? Soar spiritually. I mean, you have to work on your spirits, your high spirits, your Islamic level, your deen, and your iman. And this causes, sometimes what happens is, I mean, you guys have to understand something. We do need a Muslim community out there. And I said it just right now. There are a lot of people living in places where they do not, there's no mosques, there's no Muslim communities, there's no Islamic centers, and they're just living in the midst of people that are not Muslims, and that's affecting them and that's affecting their children. You have to be around a good Muslim community. And the best community, of course, your best friend is going to be your husband. I mean, he spiritually is supposed to make you become strong because you guys are always together. So you have to have a strong bond together. And that was the first thing I said, that you guys, the more you get closer to Allah, the more you get closer to each other. And I told you guys, it's like a pyramid. You and your husband are at the bottom. And the more you guys strive to please Allah, the more you guys are getting closer to Allah and getting closer to each other. Because as you notice, the more you go up the pyramid, the more it gets pointy and closer to each other. Okay, so your husband is going to help you, inshallah, spiritually, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have any Muslim friends. So for this reason, you don't want to neglect having good Muslim women in your life, good Muslim sisters. And the same thing goes to who? To your husband. So sometimes a lot of people, they're like, I don't want to have any friends. I don't want to get into the community. I just want to be at home. No, don't let falling in love with your husband make you fall out of friendship with your tribe, because we do need each other. We do need each other, sisters. No matter what you think you are, we need each other. I mean, you need a friend for your son. Your son needs friends. How is your friend going to have friends if you don't know his mother, if your husband doesn't know the father? So you're getting to know the community, and it's for your children too. So for this reason, it's for you and for your community. Here, I want to ask you a question. I want to show you how important the community is for you. You guys know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed salah on every one of us. But notice how Allah made salah, especially for the men, in a congregation, jama'ah. Why? Why couldn't the men just pray at home? Because when they go to the masjid, they meet each other, they know about the affairs and the things that the issues that are going on with Muslims. They help one another. Same thing, Siyam. We eat together and we fast together. Same thing, Hajj. All of us at the same time. Allah could have made Hajj like Umrah. You know, everybody goes at a certain period of time during the year. But no, Allah made it at a certain period of time where everybody's going to be there on Mount Arafah. You know, so they're all going to be there together in Mina, in Mecca. Why? So it's like an Islamic conference. Zakah, it's something between us together. You know, we give 2.5% of our wealth and so on. So notice the 5 pillars of Islam, it's something that we practice together. And practicing together makes us stronger. We need each other. Allah said in Surah Al-Asr, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. You know, each and every one of us advises their brother and sister to have sabr and to do the right thing, to be righteous and to stay with the haqq, to be with the truth. So we need each other, sisters. Okay? And like you guys said, I mean, many of the advice I'm giving right now to you guys, many of you guys know it. But it's just the sense of us being together, feeling with each other, understanding that I'm not the only one that's going through these trials, everybody else too. And fadhakkir, as a reminder, we remind each other. So even the Quran is a reminder. Okay, maybe you memorized the Quran. Maybe you read the Quran already once and you know what's in it. But every time you read the Quran, it reminds you of something you didn't pay attention to. So we as a Muslim community are reminders and we help each other to be, you know, stronger. Another thing is your spouse comes first. And I said that when we talked about priority. Okay, your husband comes first. Okay, true, you have to have a Muslim community, you have to have Muslim friends, but not before your husband. Your husband comes number 1. So that's a problem. Many times you find people, and I noticed that, sometimes the wife is lonely because her husband's always out with his friends. Okay, there's a difference between you being single and you being married. When you were single, you could spend every day with your friends, but now you're married. I'm not saying you're going to lose your friends when you get married, but okay, now you have a certain period of time when you meet with your friends. And this could be with women or men. I mean, there are a lot of women out there. Oh, come on, today I have to go to the mall with my friends. No, today's my friends, you know, party. Today's this and that. And every day you're going and coming. Your husband's like, well, what about me? And the same thing, the wife is looking to her husband. He's like, well, listen, me and my friends were going out to watch a football match or a basketball game. And every day he's out there. Come on, you guys, you're married now. You have more of a responsibility. So nobody comes before your husband. And never cause problems for your husband. I mean, sometimes I want to tell you something. Sometimes your sister's like, come on, come over my house. I'm bored. And, you know, you don't want to let your sister down. I'm talking about your sibling, your sister. And you get in a fight with your husband because your sister's bored. No, I'm sorry. You have to understand something. Your sister, you love her. But if your husband doesn't want you to go to your sister's house right now, say, I'm sorry. Maybe later on. Okay. So don't cause problems with your house just because of your sister, and not even because of your mom. You know, be like, Mom, I really love you. I just wanted to call you to make sure everything's okay. I'm sorry today I can't come, but inshallah I will come, you know, on the weekend, and this and that. Okay. So not even for your mom, don't cause problems. And the last but not least, okay, this is a very important thing, grow spiritually together. Okay. You guys are growing. You guys, you got married when you were 20, 21, 22, 24, 30. You guys are growing in age, but also every day that passes by, you guys should be growing spiritually together. And in order for you guys to spiritually grow together, you guys, it's okay for online, like to be taking courses online. You guys, every day that passes by and your iman doesn't increase, you can say that's a loss. That's a loss. Every day that passes by is part of you. It's part of your life. Okay. And that day is not going to come. That day is not going to come back. So for this reason, sisters, try always to at least pray one salah together. Qiyam layl, make dua together. Take a course, an Islamic course together. Read the Quran together. And remember all of those pessimistic people out there that tell you, don't let marriage change you. you should answer them and say, no, marriage, inshallah, is going to change me, but to what? To the better. Why, when we always hear the word change, we think of changing to the worse? You can always change to what's better. So I think you guys should spiritually grow every day. And inshallah, this is going to help you, inshallah, to be better parents. And inshallah, well, let's say, first of all, it's going to help you to be better husbands and wives. And I'm sure that when you become a better husband and a wife, that's going to help you to become a very good parent. Sorry, Sheikha, if you don't mind me asking personal question between me and my husband. I feel there is a gap. Even if he is home, he is always on phone and playing video games and won't pay attention for us and his children. Here, I want to tell you something, sister. Okay. To answer your question, I can do it in an indirect way. I'm trying to give you a solution. You know what you could do? Like one day when you're sitting with your children, you can bring up a point about, what do you guys think? You're talking to your children. What are the things you like in your mom and dad? And what are the things you don't like in your mom and dad? Like sometimes if it's going to come from you, he probably won't really care about it. But I really do believe that if he hears it from his children, it's going to be heartbreaking. So for this reason, I think it's like a smart way. Just try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll try to, picture something else. Okay. But I think you should make it come indirectly from the children. So when you guys are like together and you're happy, not when he's in a bad mood, you're like, let's play a game. What do you guys say? Right now, each one of your children is going to say, what do you like in your mom and dad? Yella, let's start with your dad. What do you like from your dad? Always start from the positive side. Never start with the negative, okay? So they're going to be like, oh, we like this. I mean, I'm sure that every single one of us has the positives and the negatives, right? Oh, I like this and dad. I like this and dad. I like this from mom, okay? And then when it comes to the negative, start off with you. Say, okay, what is it that you don't like in me, mom? And just show your husband how that when your children talked about you and they said that you didn't like this, that you were able to absorb it, okay? And you were like, okay, right. I do really feel that sometimes I do scream at you for no reason. I have to be calmer, for instance. I'm sure that if your children, their dad is not giving them time, I'm really sure that they're going to say it. Somebody from the children is going to say it. So let the child say it in front of your husband. And in this case, what's going to happen? Maybe this will be the thing that's going to keep him aware. So just try that. If it doesn't work, ask me the question again. And inshallah, does anybody here have a point to make? Here, let me just stop the recording. Okay.